Hello and welcome to another Lincoln property blog, brought to you by Ben from Walters of Lincolnshire. This week we ask, is the Lincoln property market broken for first-time buyers? As we move into early summer 2025, Lincoln's property market paints a bleak picture, especially for first-time buyers. Headlines scream that getting a foot on the ladder is harder than ever, and for many that feels painfully true. With the average first-time buyer deposit in 2024 hitting a staggering £61,000, dreams of home ownership are slipping further out of reach. Soaring rents and the ever-rising cost of living have created a perfect storm. Young buyers are told to save more, spend less, and be patient. Advice that rings hollow when house prices continue climbing faster than salaries. For many in Lincoln and beyond, the idea of owning a home now feels more like a fantasy than a future plan. Most people instinctively turn to the house price to earnings ratio, HPER, as the go-to benchmark for affordability. In 1983, the East Midlands house price to earnings ratio was 2.29. Today it's 4.63. Meaning today, the average house price is 4.63 times more than the average annual income of a first-time buyer. On the face of it, it is a lot more expensive to buy a home today than, say, the early 1980s. After all, if house prices are nearly 5 times the average salary, it certainly feels more expensive than when they were just twice the average salary. However, let's just hold on a second. Before accepting the headlines at face value, let's look under the bonnet and examine the stats. First-time buyers with a decent credit history and have since 2010 can obtain a 95% mortgage, meaning they would only need to save for a 5% deposit. The average cost of a first-time Lincoln buyer's house is presently £166,200. So based on a 95% mortgage at 4.29% with a 5% deposit of £8,310 on a 29-year repayment mortgage, the average Lincoln first-time buyer home would cost £793.71 per month. But that's not the whole picture. Even though the house price to earnings ratio is a lot higher, I believe there is a more meaningful indicator of first-time buyer affordability, and one that tells us how much of an actual stretch home ownership is for first-time buyers, and that is mortgage payments as a percentage of take-home pay. This measure tells you how much of a first-time buyer's monthly salary is going out, month in, month out, in mortgage costs. And this is where things get interesting. The mortgage as a percentage of take-home pay affordability ratio considers not just the price of the house against salaries, but also interest rates, mortgage term lengths, and income tax changes. It's a more holistic view of the financial burden on first-time buyers and gives a much clearer, real-world idea of how affordable owning a home really is. The remaining part of this article explains why this is the case. In the early to mid-1980s, Britain emerged from a recession, leaving the property market and key housing ratios relatively subdued. Then came the 1988 housing boom, sparked by the looming withdrawal of dual mortgage interest tax relief, MIRAS. Buyers who had planned to move in future years rushed to beat the deadline, creating a spike in demand and pushing house prices sharply upwards. But once the MIRAS cut-off passed, demand for homes collapsed almost overnight. The boom, driven by easy mortgage lending, proved unsustainable. As inflation picked up in the late 1980s, the government raised interest rates to protect the sterling's position in the exchange rate mechanism, pushing Bank of England base rates to 12% by late 1989 and peaking at 15% by Black Wednesday in 1992. The combination of soaring interest rates, a deepening UK recession, and the loss of dual mirrors shattered buyer confidence and sent the housing market into a steep decline. First-time buyers were hit hardest, facing the double blow of stagnant wages and rapidly rising mortgage costs. Mortgage payments as a share of income surged to record highs, locking many out of home ownership or saddling them with unaffordable repayments. This led to many repossessions, which further saturated the market with homes for sale and reduced house prices. By the mid-1990s, things had settled, as the fall in house prices seen in the early 1990s turned into house price stability and interest rates at a more manageable 5 to 7%. The early 2000s told a very different story. Between 2000 and 2007, house prices surged by 10 to 18% annually, while interest rates remained relatively stable between 4.5 and 6%. This steady growth pushed house prices and affordability ratios as buyers spent more upfront and monthly to secure a home. By 2008, a growing share of household income was being swallowed by mortgage repayments. After such a good economic run between 2000 and 2008, the global financial crash of 2008 put an end to the increasing ratios as interest rates plummeted. The Bank of England cut rates in 2009 to record lows to stimulate the economy. As a result, despite house prices gradually increasing again from 2010 onwards and the house price to earnings ratio rising with them, the percentage of income spent on monthly mortgage payments actually declined. That created an unusual situation where for nearly a decade, the house price to earnings ratio and mortgage costs as percent of income diverged dramatically. It showed that although homes looked less affordable on paper, the monthly cost of owning a home decreased. Then came COVID. The property market saw a surge in activity and prices during the third quarter of 2020 and 2021, fueled by the so-called COVID boom. People re-evaluated where they wanted to live. Some moved out of cities and there was a surge in demand. Meanwhile, interest rates remained low, giving buyers greater spending power. This caused house prices to rise quickly in many areas in 2020 and 2021, pushing up both ratios because of house price growth. However, by mid-2022, inflationary pressures prompted the Bank of England to begin hiking interest rates. The result? A steep increase in mortgage costs throughout 2022 and 2023, meaning both ratios continued to grow, not because of house price growth as per the previous 2 years, but because of higher mortgage costs. By mid-2023, this affordability metric peaked, but notably not to the levels seen in the late 1980s or even 2007 before the financial crash. Mortgage payments as a percentage of take-home pay rose to just 35.2%. Now, as we move into 2025, the good news is that mortgage payments as a percentage of take-home pay are decreasing, suggesting that affordability is improving for first-time buyers in Lincoln. That's despite house prices remaining relatively high, which elevates the house price to earnings ratio. What's changing is the balance between mortgage rates and earnings. Real wage growth, wages after inflation, is growing, so first-time buyers have more money. As interest rates are no longer climbing but dropping, it means first-time buyers are starting to regain some ground and affordability is getting better. And that's the core message. While the house price to earnings ratio gets all the headlines, the mortgage burden on monthly incomes truly tells the story of affordability. East Midlands first-time buyers spend 31.5% of their take-home pay on mortgages compared to 38.7% in 2007 and 43.4% in 1989. The bottom line is that it costs less to pay for a mortgage today than in 2007 and 1989, which is in my opinion a far more meaningful and relatable measure. It's also the number that matters most to lenders. When someone applies for a mortgage, the affordability check the bank or building society do isn't just about how much the property costs. It's about how much of their monthly income is needed to service the debt. That's why the mortgage as a percentage of take-home pay is so important. It reflects the reality of home ownership for first-time buyers more than any headline house price ever could. So to Lincoln's first-time buyers and their parents helping with deposits, don't be disheartened by scary headlines about house price multiples. Keep an eye on the mortgage cost as a percentage of income. Right now, that figure is heading in the right direction, and that's something worth paying attention to. Understanding these trends can help buyers time their move better, negotiate confidently, and ultimately make informed choices about what they can truly afford. With interest rates stabilising and mortgage burdens falling, 2025 could be a much more welcoming year for aspiring homeowners in Lincoln. What are your thoughts on this?